The Earth, 66 million years ago, was not like the one we walk on now. The continents looked familiar, but not quite. The oceans shimmered with unfamiliar currents. The skies stretched wider, cleaner, untouched by industry or light. And beneath those skies, life thrived. Giant ferns and flowering plants blanketed the land. Towering trees swayed gently under warm breezes. The air was thick with the scent of wet leaves and blooming pollen. Insects buzzed lazily between blossoms. Rivers carved paths through dense green forests, home to creatures so strange and so magnificent, it's hard to imagine they once walked this same earth. And they did, with pride, with power, with purpose. Dinosaurs, from the thundering footsteps of the Tyrannosaurus rex, to the graceful sway of the hadrosaurs, to the armored backs of the ankylosaurs, the land was ruled by giants. Not monsters, not myths, but animals. Real, breathing, feeling, living beings, some nurturing, some territorial, some intelligent in ways we still don't fully understand. The world was not in chaos. It was in balance. Predator and prey, forest and flood, life and death, each in harmony. There were no cities, no noise, no steel machines. Only the natural rhythm of a planet alive and free. Somewhere in a vast coastal plain, a mother triceratops nudges her young toward water. Their heavy footsteps leave soft impressions in the mud. Overhead, a pterosaur glides silently, catching a rising thermal. In the distance, a herd of massive sauropods moves like living mountains, their long necks weaving through the canopy as they feed on the treetops. This was Earth, untouched, unaware. No species knew what the stars held. Number. Creature could look up at the night sky and see doom racing toward them. No mind could fathom that high above their peaceful world, far beyond the clouds and even the moon, a traveler had begun its descent. But it was coming. A rock. Just a rock, really? Roughly 10 kilometers wide, cold, silent, ordinary. And yet, it carried the power to erase everything. It had been traveling through space for millions of years. A piece of debris, cast away from some ancient cosmic collision, drifting aimlessly. Until now, its course had changed. It was falling. Faster and faster. Than Earth was in its path. Back on the surface, life continued. Creatures nested. They fed. They played. They fought. They lived. They didn't know they were in their final days. They didn't know that the sun would soon disappear, that fire would rain from the skies, that oceans would boil, that winds would scream across continents. But for now, the world was warm. The rivers ran clear, and the heartbeat of the planet thumped softly, peacefully. Somewhere in the jungle, two dinosaurs locked eyes, not as predator and prey, but as parent and child. The older one gently lowered its head and nudged the smaller closer. Their eyes closed. Their sides rose and fell with breath. They rested beneath the safety of the leaves. Perhaps that night a gentle rain fell. Perhaps the stars were visible, bright and unthreatening. Perhaps in that moment, all felt right. And maybe that is the cruelest part of the story. That just before the world ended, it was perfect. To understand the weight of what was lost, we must first understand what once lived. The age of dinosaurs was not chaos. It was not the nightmare some stories would have us believe. It was a world with structure, with relationships, with ecosystems. That had evolved over millions of years. It was home. In the lush valleys. Vast herds of hadrosaurs moved like tides, synchronized, graceful, cautious. These duck-billed dinosaurs were gentle giants, communicating through deep vocal calls that echoed across the plains. Mothers stayed close to their young. The herd watched, waited, moved together. Protection was a shared instinct. One Life meant many. Farther north, across dense forests and fern fields, lumbering giants roamed in slow, deliberate steps. The sauropods, towering creatures with necks longer than school buses, and hearts that pumped hundreds of liters of blood every minute. They moved with patience, bending trees with a single turn of the head. Their footprints became lakes. There, size was not for violence, but survival. Among them, smaller creatures lived too. Feathered raptors darted between bushes, intelligent and swift. They hunted in coordinated groups, communicating through clicks and cries. They knew each other. They remembered. Even in those ancient minds, there was awareness. And then there were the king's dot in the shadows of the forests. Beneath the golden light of a Mesozoic sun, a Tyrannosaurus rex stands still. Immense, muscles like coiled rope. Beneath scarred skin, its nostrils flare, sensing a scent carried by the wind. It does not roar. It listens, waits, thinks. Despite its terrifying reputation, the T-Rex was more than just a predator. It was a protector, a scavenger, a parent. We have found fossilized remains of a T-Rex lying beside its young, their bones forever curled. Together, as if in a final embrace, this was not a monster. This was a life, ancient, powerful, and capable of tenderness. Above it all, the skies told another story. Pterosaurus soared, their wings catching warm thermals like living kites. Some had wingspans wider than fighter jets. Others were small and nimble, plucking fish from lakes in mid-flight. Their cries pierced the air, a reminder that the skies, too, were alive. Even beneath the ground, there was a world. Burrowing reptiles, egg-laying species, early mammals, tiny, hidden lives scurrying beneath the shadows of giants. Some would perish with the rest. Some would survive. The land was full of colors, not just green and brown, but deep reds of blooming plants, golden grasses that swayed with the wind, and brilliant blues in shallow lakes reflecting ancient skies. And everywhere, movement, breathing, breeding, chasing, fleeing, teaching. Life pulsed in every corner of the world, but what made it extraordinary was not just its size or speed or strangeness, but the complexity, the intelligence, the feeling. Because make no mistake, dinosaurs felt. They felt danger. They felt pain. They mourned. They protected. They loved. We know this, not just from fossils, but from the stories those fossils whisper. Healed wounds, nests carefully arranged, migration patterns that span continents. They lived not as background, characters to some greater drama, but as the main story itself. And this story was about to end, but they didn't know that. For them, the day was like any other. Hunt, feed, defend, repeat. Somewhere, two young raptors playfully snapped at each other's tails. Somewhere else, a dinosaur stretched under the morning sun, its skin warming, its eyes half closed in peace. Somewhere, a herd crossed a river, and a mother paused to help her struggling child. Somewhere, a predator stood atop a hill, gazing across its territory, not knowing it was for the last time. And above them, the sky remained quiet, but beyond that blue canvas, far above the clouds in the calm, a light had begun to grow. It moved faster than any creature below could imagine. And though it made no sound yet, it was coming. For now, though, the world of dinosaurs remained unaware, living, breathing, existing in all its ancient glory. Glory that had taken millions of years to build, and would be gone in minutes. It began with light, not the warm, golden light of sunrise, not the playful glimmer of sunlight on leaves. This light was different. It came from the sky, but not from the sun. It started as a star, just one among many, faint, flickering, unnoticed. No dinosaur looked up and felt fear. Why would they? The skies had always been safe, but this was no star dot. It was moving fast. Too fast dot. It had been traveling for eons, drifting through the emptiness of space. A leftover shard of some ancient planetary collision. 10 kilometers. Wide, heavy with metal and rock. A forgotten bullet fired by the universe itself. That it had no mind, no purpose. But it had direction. And that direction was Earth. For days, maybe weeks, the light grew. To creatures below, it was simply a new sparkle in the night sky. Something curious, harmless dot, but above the atmosphere, the laws of nature were being tested. The asteroid had begun its final descent. It raced toward the planet at over 70,000 kilometers per hour. That's 20 times faster than a speeding bullet. There was no stopping it. No force on Earth strong enough to change its path. No intelligence. Advanced enough to predict its arrival dot, it was too late. Somewhere on Earth, a great thunderstorm rumbled across a coastline. Winds bent the trees. Rain tapped across the backs of dinosaurs huddled under cover. The world beneath still obeyed its natural rhythms. But above, nature had broken its own rules. The asteroid now pierced through the outer atmosphere. Friction turned its surface white-hot. A blazing fireball streaked across the sky, brighter than the sun. For a few seconds, every creature that looked up saw it, not understanding, not knowing, but seeing dot birds scattered from trees. Animals froze mid-step. A deep instinct, millions of years old, whispered, "Something is wrong." Somewhere in the Yucatan Peninsula, what is now modern-day Mexico, the sky split open. The asteroid, now fully engulfed in flame, roared toward its final destination, a shallow sea near the edge of the continent. A place teeming with life, fish, reptiles, coral reefs, delicate ecosystems it struck, with the force of over 1 billion atomic bombs. But that is the next chapter. For now, just before impact, there was silence. That strange, stretched kind of silence. Right before a scream, perhaps a Tyrannosaurus raised its head in confusion, sniffing the air. Perhaps a mother Triceratops urged her young to move faster. Perhaps birds took to the sky, seconds before it became fire. But a moment, a breath, a pause, a stillness. The universe exhaled dot, and then impact. August skies, 66 million years ago, 1 second. The world was as it had always been. The next, it was on fire. The asteroid slammed into Earth with unimaginable force. It struck shallow water near what is now the Yucatan Peninsula. But the ocean offered no protection. In fact, it made everything worse in that one instant. The ground didn't shake. It shattered. A blinding flash of light, brighter than anything Earth had ever seen, exploded across the sky. Mountains melted. Air ignited within seconds. Everything within 1,000 kilometers was vaporized. Not burned, not broken. Gone. The rock beneath the sea boiled. The ocean itself, hundreds of meters deep, lifted into the sky like a curtain of steam and flame. A crater more than 100 miles wide tore open the Earth's crust. Rings of molten stone exploded outward at hypersonic speed, the very planet bleeding light and fire. Shockwaves rippled across continents. Mountains buckled. Lakes turned to steam. Forests collapsed like matchsticks. Animals nearby never saw it coming. They didn't have time to run, or even turn. They were there, and then they weren't. Further out, dinosaurs looked up, confused. The sky was no longer blue. It was white, then red, then black. Some tried to flee. Some stood frozen. Some ran to protect their young. But the firestorm was faster as the blast wave expanded outward. It ignited everything in its path. Trees burst into flames from thousands of kilometers away, not from contact, but from the sheer heat of the atmosphere, now compressed into a rolling wall of destruction. Dust and molten debris were launched high into the sky. Some of it even left the atmosphere, only to rain back down minutes later as fire. From one side of the planet to the other, the earth burned. Tsunamis surged outward from the impact zone, towering over coastlines like liquid mountains. They reached places thousands of miles away, wiping clean entire ecosystems in minutes. The wind itself became a weapon, faster than hurricanes, carrying fire, ash, and death in every direction. It was not just a strike. It was a reset for hours, maybe days. The earth convulsed. Volcanoes erupted from the pressure. Fault lines cracked. Even the Earth's axis may have shifted slightly, as if the planet itself had staggered from the blow. And then came the darkness. Debris ejected into the sky began to spread around the globe. The sun, once the giver of life, was now blocked out. A blanket of ash, soot, and sulfuric particles wrapped the planet in shadow. It would stay there for years. But that's the next chapter. For now, we sit at ground zero. The world has been struck. Life has been shaken. The air is thick with ash. The oceans roar. The sky bleeds light. And the dinosaurs, once kings of the earth, now face a future they cannot comprehend. Some will try to adapt. Some will survive the first fires, the first waves, the first winds. But the real killer hasn't arrived yet. Not fire, not impact, but cold and silence. The fire was fast, but the silence that followed was endless. In the hours after the impact, Earth was unrecognizable. The skies turned black, choked with dust and debris. The clouds glowed faintly red from within, not from sunlight, but from the fires still burning across continents. But soon, even that red faded. A deep, heavy darkness fell, and it stayed for days, then weeks, then months. The sun was gone, not by nightfall, but by ashfall. Light could no longer reach the surface. Photosynthesis, the process that fed every plant, stopped. And with it, the chain began to collapse. Plants died. Then the herbivores. Then the predators. The earth began to starve. The temperatures dropped, not by a few degrees, but by dozens. A global winter had begun, not caused by snow or ice, but by dust. Fine particles ejected into the upper atmosphere formed a thick sun-blocking veil. It wrapped the entire planet in cold. It may have lasted months, even years. The dinosaurs had faced many things before: droughts, floods, volcanoes. But this was different. This was everywhere, all at once. And there was no escape. In the darkness, the forests withered. Trees dropped their leaves. Ferns browned and shriveled. Entire ecosystems collapsed into silence. Herbivores, once thriving in great herds, now wandered alone, confused, hungry, weak. Predators, once mighty and feared, scavenged desperately for scraps, bones, rot, anything. And then, even the scavenging stopped, because there was nothing left. Eggs lay cold in empty nests. Fossils show signs of unhatched young, frozen in time, never given a chance. The earth became a graveyard, but not all at once. Some fought to survive. Some may have adapted briefly. There are traces of smaller species that endured longer than others, clinging to life in pockets of warmth and food. But the clock was ticking. Volcanic activity, already high before the impact, likely increased in the aftermath, spewing more gases into the atmosphere. Acid rain fell. Oceans became more acidic. Marine life collapsed just as quickly as land life. It was not a single moment of death. It was a slow, suffocating decline, drawn out over years, maybe decades. A mass extinction. By the end of it, 3 out of every 4 species on Earth were gone. Dinosaurs, pterosaurs, large marine reptiles, countless plants, tiny insects, coral, reefs, plankton. Gone. The soundscape of Earth, once filled with growls, calls, rustling leaves, beating wings, had been replaced by silence. But there were survivors. Not many, but enough. Tiny mammals burrowed deep underground, fed on whatever remained. Insects, fungi, and some aquatic life adapted. And perhaps most fascinating of all, some feathered dinosaurs, small bird-like creatures, endured. Their bloodline would carry on. Not through dominance, but through adaptation. They were not the biggest, not the strongest, but they were resilient. And in time, they would rise again. But for now, the age of dinosaurs was over. The Earth was dark, cold, still, and alone. The fires that once roared like angry beasts across the land had finally faded into smoldering embers. But the destruction they left behind was beyond imagining. The skies were no longer blue. They were gray, thick, and suffocating, shrouded in a never-ending blanket of ash and smoke. The sunlight, once warm and life-giving, had become a pale, ghostly shadow of its former self, barely able to penetrate the soot-filled air. And with the death of light came the death of sound. Earth, once teeming with the echoes of Titanic, footsteps, the cries of predators, the fluttering of wings, and a chorus of insects and amphibians, now lay in unnatural silence. Not the kind of silence you hear in the deep forest or the early morning before the world wakes, but a vast, chilling silence. A silence that felt like mourning, like the earth itself was holding its breath in sorrow. Great dinosaurs that had ruled this world for over 150 million years were gone. Entire species erased in a matter of days, weeks, months at most. Their bones lay scattered across the scorched ground, tangled in roots of burned trees or buried under layers of toxic mud. Mighty tyrannosaurs, towering sauropods, swift raptors, and armored ankylosaurs, all gone. Not just wiped out, but forgotten by time, swallowed by the earth that once celebrated their presence. And yet, beneath this tragedy, something ancient and primal stirred, not in the open fields or burnt jungles, but deep underground in small cracks, in hidden burrows, and beneath fallen logs. Life, though battered and bruised, had not surrendered. Tiny mammals, rodents, shrew-like creatures, poked their heads out cautiously, their eyes adjusting to the eerie twilight. Birds, the surviving lineage of the dinosaurs, flapped their soot-covered wings and began timid calls into the silence. Insects, hardy and relentless, crept along the blackened soil. This was not resurrection. It was resilience. The planet was now in its darkest winter, a global cold spell that would last for years. Without sunlight, plant life withered. Food chains collapsed. Yet the smallest, the weakest, the overlooked, they endured. Where the giants fell, the tiny endured. Where roar met ruin, silence made space for rebirth. And Earth, in all her ancient wisdom, began again. Not with a bang, but with a whisper. And so, the final roar faded not with a scream, but in silence. An empire that had ruled for over 160 million years came to an end not in one breath, but in a long choking sigh from the earth itself. The dinosaurs, once towering and thundering, across forests, deserts, and floodplains, now lay quiet, etched only in stone, bone, and memory. But was it really the end? Not quite. In the gentle rustle of leaves on a quiet morning, in the hollow echo of a crow's caw, in the soft, feathered beat of a sparrow's wings, something ancient still lingers. The dinosaurs, in a sense, never fully left us. Their story didn't conclude with fire and ash. It transformed, adapted, re-emerged in smaller, subtler forms. The great beasts who once ruled the land became, over millions of years, the very birds we see around us every single day. That robin perched on your windowsill? That eagle soaring above the cliffs? That hummingbird hovering with impossible grace? They carry a legacy that predates us by epochs. A legacy forged in the heart of a vanished world. But before we reach them, we must understand what that legacy truly means. Because the story of the dinosaurs isn't just a tale of extinction. It's a story of resilience, of transformation, of continuity in the face of unimaginable destruction. It's also a mirror, a quiet reflection of what happens when a world thought invincible meets its moment of reckoning. After the asteroid struck, after the fires had burned and the ash had darkened the sky, the world did not simply wait for life to return. It fought for it. The earth, bruised and battered, began a slow, aching healing. The first seeds sprouted where forests once stood, rivers rerooted, oceans calmed. The dust slowly settled and beneath the soil, in the dark silence, life persisted. Not all dinosaurs had vanished in a day. Some small, bird-like creatures, perhaps living in trees, covered in feathers, agile and light, managed to survive. They adapted to the cold. They learned to eat different foods. They bred quickly, and most importantly, they flew. Flight may have been their salvation, while their massive cousins, the tyrannosaurs, the ceratopsians, the sauropods, fell. Those who could escape upwards may have dodged the worst of the aftermath. Trees became sanctuary. Mobility became armor. In time, these small survivors spread, diversified, and evolved into thousands of species. Beaks changed shape. Wings adjusted. Colors brightened. Calls sharpened. And so began the age of birds. When we look at them today, it's hard to imagine. A pigeon doesn't evoke the same awe as a velociraptor. A goose doesn't roar like a theropod. But closer look at the talons, the beady eyes, the pecking motion, the nesting instinct. There are echoes there, shadows of a time long gone. Yet, the legacy of the dinosaurs is not only biological. It's emotional, philosophical, human, for us creatures, who arrived so very late in the story of life. It raises humbling questions. What does it mean to rule a world? What does power really look like when even the mightiest can vanish in a moment? The dinosaurs didn't cause their own downfall. They were the victims of cosmic chance. A rock from space, moving at tens of thousands of miles per hour, changed everything. And that randomness, that fragility, forces us to confront our own place in the grand narrative we build. We dominate. We believe in permanence. But the earth has a way of reminding us nothing is guaranteed. We are guests here, just as they were. But the lesson of the dinosaurs is not only of caution, it is of renewal. Because life does return. It finds a way, always. Even after the darkest winters, something green sprouts. Even after silence, there is song. And perhaps that's the most beautiful part of their legacy. Not that they ruled, but that they still whisper through the world they left behind. In fossils, we find stories locked in stone jaws frozen mid-bite, footprints preserved in ancient mud, eggs buried in long-forgotten nests. And as paleontologists unearth these relics, brushing away layers of time, they bring the past alive. They remind us that history is not gone. It's sleeping, just beneath our feet. Children gaze at skeletons in museums with wide eyes and wonder. Did they really exist? That big? That strong? That strange? And the answer, always, is yes. And more than that, they still exist. Not just in bones, not just in books, but in the rhythm of the world around us. The seasons, the migrations, the instinct to survive, to Adapt to move forward. The dinosaurs teach us that time is vast, that what seems permanent rarely is, and that the world will go on with or without us. They remind us of the beauty in scale, the tiny paired with the massive, the fleeting beside the eternal. Their bones are prayers, their fossils are poems, and if you listen closely, on a quiet night, you might just hear it, the ancient heartbeat of a world that once was, the echo of a tale dragging through ferns, the sharp, curious chirp of a feathered survivor, the soft, sad hush of wind over stone. Their reign may be over, but their memory? It's stitched into the very fabric of the earth, in their shadow. We breathe air shaped by their forests. We live on ground they once ruled. They are gone, and yet, somehow, they are still here,